As I'm making the phone call, I get choke slammed to the ground from behind.
From getting choke slammed by police outside an NFL stadium to calling out supermodel Kate Upton with some of the most brutal insults ever captured on social media.
She is! Kate Upton, if you put a Samsung charger next to Kate Upton's body, it is the exact same thing. Same thing.
These are some of Miko Grimes' craziest moments caught on camera. And yeah, she's a whole different level of wild. The Sun Life Stadium arrest. The date was September 27th, 2015, and what should have been just another exciting Miami Dolphins game day turned into one of the most controversial arrests in NFL history. This wasn't just any arrest. This was a viral moment that would define Miko Grimes' public persona forever, captured on video and shared millions of times across social media platforms. The setting was Sun Life Stadium in Miami, where the Dolphins were preparing to face the Buffalo Bills. For Miko, this was supposed to be routine. She had been attending every single Dolphins game since 2009, missing only one game when she gave birth to her son. She was a fixture at the stadium, a familiar face in the exclusive 72 Club section, which cost $1,000 per game and provided access to premium seating and private entrances. But this particular game day would be different. The stadium had recently undergone renovations, and the usual entrance routes were disrupted. Adding to the chaos, Bills fans were particularly aggressive that day, reportedly throwing beer and food at Miko as she tried to make her way into the stadium. The reason for their hostility? The day before, on her radio show, Miko had called Buffalo the armpit of America, a comment that had clearly struck a nerve with the visiting fans.
That particular day, the day before, we were playing the Buffalo Bills, and I called the Buffalo Bills, I called Buffalo the armpit of America, the city itself.
According to Miko's own account, she was trying to escort her friend, who had never been to an NFL game before and was intoxicated, through the increasingly hostile crowd when she realized they wouldn't be able to reach their seats through the normal route. She called the Dolphins security team, who suggested she return to the tailgating area where they could pick her up with a golf cart and drive her around the crowd to her entrance. But as Miko attempted to return to the tailgating area, that's when everything went sideways.
Trying to walk through the crowd, Bills fans are throwing beers at me and trash talking me, throwing food. They're like mad because I said the armpit thing or whatever, and I'm cool with that. I can handle that. Don't bother me. I'm cool.
What happened next would become the most viral moment of Miko's life.
And a cop sees me, and he comes as I'm walking. He shoves both of us to the ground and says, "You can't go through here." And I said, "Why the can't I?" Well, first of all, why are you putting your hands on me? Like, you can use your voice, don't touch me.
The most shocking part of Miko's account is what happened next.
As I'm making the phone call, I get choke slammed to the ground. From behind, by the way. I don't know who it is. I actually think it's a Bills fan because of what had happened. So my natural reaction, what would you do?
Swing on that.
I'm swinging.
Yeah.
It's a cop. It's a cop.
The video footage, captured by bystander Tiago Miranda and shared on YouTube, shows the aftermath of this alleged attack. In the viral clip, we see Miko pinned to the ground by multiple officers wearing her husband's jersey and screaming. But perhaps the most disturbing part of the incident, according to Miko, was what happened after the camera stopped rolling. The aftermath of the arrest was almost as dramatic as the incident itself. Miko was charged with disorderly conduct, battery on a police officer, and resisting arrest with violence. The charges were serious. She was potentially facing significant jail time. However, after an investigation, several charges were dropped or reduced, and the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office eventually cleared her of the remaining charges in November 2015. The impact of this arrest extended far beyond the immediate legal consequences. The incident strained Brent Grimes' relationship with the Miami Dolphins organization, and the viral video cemented Miko's reputation as a confrontational figure who wasn't afraid to challenge authority, regardless of the consequences. But if you thought the stadium arrest was wild, wait until you hear about the time Miko decided to take on one of the world's most famous supermodels. the Twitter war with Kate Upton. If Miko Grimes' arrest put her on the map as a controversial figure, her explosive Twitter feud with supermodel Kate Upton in 2016 showed the world that she was willing to take on anyone, regardless of their fame, influence, or public standing. This wasn't just a simple disagreement between two public figures. It was a collision of social justice activism and celebrity culture that played out in real time on social media, with millions of people watching every heated exchange. The catalyst for this explosive confrontation was the ongoing national conversation about NFL players kneeling during the national anthem to protest police brutality and racial injustice. When Miami Dolphins players joined this peaceful protest movement, supermodel Kate Upton, who was dating then Detroit Tigers pitcher Justin Verlander, decided to publicly criticize the players' actions. Upton's comment suggested that the kneeling was disrespectful to the flag and to military service members. For most people, celebrities' opinion on NFL protests might have been just another voice in the crowd. But for Miko Grimes, who had been using her platform to speak out about police brutality and social justice issues for years, Upton's comments represented something much more problematic: the voice of privilege speaking from a position of ignorance about the very real issues that were driving the protests. Miko's response was swift, brutal, and absolutely unfiltered. Her tweet read, "Dear, at Kate Upton, where in the was your voice when Philando Castile was murdered? Shut up, bitch." This wasn't just a disagreement. This was a full-scale verbal assault that immediately caught the attention of sports media outlets across the country. But Miko wasn't finished. She continued her attack on Upton, making personal comments about the model's appearance and questioning her credibility to speak on social justice issues. In subsequent posts, she compared Upton's body to a Samsung charger and made other disparaging remarks that showed she was willing to make this personal as well as political.
She is! Kate Upton, if you put a Samsung charger next to Kate Upton's body, it is the exact same thing. Same thing.
What made this feud particularly compelling was the stark contrast between the two women involved. On one side, you had Kate Upton, a blonde, conventionally beautiful supermodel who represented mainstream American beauty standards and celebrity culture. On the other side, you had Miko Grimes, a black woman who had been using her platform to speak out about police brutality and racial injustice, often at great personal cost. This incident was particularly significant because it occurred during a time when the NFL was grappling with how to respond to player protests and the broader national conversation about racial justice. Miko's voice added another layer to this conversation, representing the perspective of someone who had been speaking out about these issues long before they became mainstream topics of discussion. Speaking of speaking out, Miko's willingness to challenge authority wasn't just limited to social media battles. Her next explosive moment would prove that she was just as fearless when it came to her own husband's team. The Ryan Tanahill Twitter meltdown, December 27, 2015, was supposed to be just another disappointing end to another disappointing Miami Dolphins season. The team had just lost to the Indianapolis Colts, effectively ending any hope of a playoff run, and fans were left to contemplate yet another year of unfulfilled potential. But what happened after that game would create one of the most explosive social media meltdowns in NFL history, as Miko Grimes unleashed a Twitter tirade that would ultimately contribute to her husband's departure from the team. The target of Miko's fury was Dolphins quarterback Ryan Tanahill, the former first-round draft pick, who had been the face of the franchise for several years, but had consistently failed to live up to expectations. For most NFL spouses, criticizing their husband's teammates would be considered a major breach of protocol, something that simply isn't done in the tight-knit world of professional football. But Miko Grimes had never been most NFL spouses. Her tweet was brutal and direct. "I knew this QB stunk the minute we signed to this team, but I tried to keep quiet so I didn't discourage BA from believing in his team." This wasn't just a casual criticism or a moment of frustration. This was a full-scale assault on Tannehill's abilities as a quarterback, coming from someone who was supposed to be part of the team family. But Miko wasn't finished with just attacking Tanahill. She then turned her attention to the Miami sports media, specifically targeting 3 reporters who covered the team regularly. She dubbed Miami Herald reporters Armando Salguero, Adam Beasley, and Andrew Abramson the 3 A's, and accused them of conspiring to protect Tanahill from legitimate criticism. What made this incident particularly explosive was the timing and the public nature of the attack. This wasn't a private conversation or a leaked comment. This was a very public, very deliberate social media campaign designed to call out what Miko saw as the failures of both the team's quarterback and the media members who covered him. The tweets were captured in screenshots and featured extensively in news reports, with the incident being discussed on ESPN's His and Hers and other major sports media platforms. The visual documentation of her tweets amplified the controversy significantly, as fans and media members could see exactly what she had said and share it widely across social media platforms. The impact of Miko's Twitter meltdown extended far beyond just embarrassing the team. Her criticism of Tanahill and the media created significant tension within the Dolphins organization, with team officials reportedly holding multiple meetings with her to discuss her social media behavior. What's particularly interesting about this incident is the insight it provides into Miko's understanding of football and her willingness to voice opinions that many others in the NFL community might have shared privately but would never express publicly. Her criticism of Tanahill wasn't based on casual observation. It came from someone who had been studying the game intensively and had strong opinions about what constituted effective quarterback play. The aftermath of the Tanahill rant had serious consequences for the Grimes family. Team owner Stephen Ross later admitted that Miko's Twitter antics played a role in the team's decision to release Brent Grimes, effectively ending his tenure with the Dolphins after several successful seasons. But here's where the story takes an even more interesting turn. In later interviews, Miko revealed that getting her husband cut from the Dolphins was actually part of her strategy. She had become increasingly frustrated with the team's management and wanted to help engineer Brent's exit so he could sign with a better organization. This revelation adds an entirely new dimension to the Tanahill Twitter meltdown. What appeared to be an impulsive, emotional outburst was actually part of a calculated strategy to create enough controversy that the team would be forced to release her husband. It was a high-risk, high-reward gambit that ultimately paid off when Brent signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers shortly after his release from Miami. The incident also highlighted the unique position that Miko occupied in the NFL ecosystem. As both a media personality and an NFL spouse, she had insider knowledge of the team's dynamics and the freedom to speak out in ways that players themselves couldn't. Her willingness to use that position to advocate for her husband's career, even at the cost of burning bridges with the organization, demonstrated a level of strategic thinking that was both impressive and controversial. But Miko's strategic thinking wasn't just limited to getting her husband off teams she didn't like. Her next explosive moment would show how she used the NFL's own hypocrisy against them. The Pro Bowl controversy. The NFL Pro Bowl has always been a somewhat controversial institution, a game that lacks the intensity of regular season play, but supposedly represents the pinnacle of individual achievement in professional football. For most players and their families, being selected for the Pro Bowl is an honor worth celebrating, even if the game itself isn't particularly competitive. But when Brent Grimes was snubbed for Pro Bowl selection despite having an outstanding season, his wife Miko saw it as something much more significant, evidence of the NFL's systemic problems with recognizing talent and treating players fairly. What happened next would become one of Miko's most memorable social media explosions, as she used the Pro Bowl snub as a launching pad for a broader critique of the NFL's hypocrisy, particularly regarding domestic violence and player discipline. This wasn't just about her husband not making an all-star team. This was about justice, fairness, and the league's moral priorities. Miko's Twitter rant was explosive and unfiltered. "I have friends that were beaten, thrown downstairs while pregnant, guys arrested, and at NFL suspended them one fucking game. Now y'all care?" This wasn't just criticism of the Pro Bowl selection process. This was a full-scale assault on the NFL's handling of domestic violence cases and what she saw as the league's misplaced priorities. The context for this outburst was the ongoing controversy surrounding the NFL's response to domestic violence incidents involving players. High-profile cases had highlighted what many saw as inadequate punishments for serious crimes, while players like her husband seemed to be overlooked for honors despite their on-field performance. For Miko, this represented a fundamental injustice that needed to be called out publicly. Her criticism extended beyond just the domestic violence issue. She said, "The NFL is the shittiest, shadiest, disrespectful professional sport in the world, and as long as I breathe air, I will talk shit about them." This wasn't just a moment of frustration. This was a comprehensive indictment of the league's values and priorities from someone who had insider knowledge of how the system actually worked. What made this Pro Bowl controversy particularly significant was how it demonstrated Miko's ability to connect individual incidents to broader systemic issues. Rather than simply complaining about her husband's snub, she used the opportunity to highlight what she saw as the league's moral failings and hypocritical standards. The incident also showcased Miko's fearlessness in taking on the NFL establishment. At a time when most players and their families were careful not to criticize the league too directly, Miko was willing to call out what she saw as corruption and injustice, regardless of the potential consequences for her husband's career. Screenshots of her tweets were featured across major media outlets, with the visual documentation of her rant spreading widely across social media platforms. The incident reinforced her reputation as someone who was willing to speak truth to power, even when that power controlled her family's livelihood. Following the Pro Bowl rant, there were reports of a confrontation with a reporter at an airport, where Miko turned the tables by asking the reporter, "Do you think Brent should have been MVP of the Pro Bowl?" The brief recorded exchange, though not widely circulated, captured her confrontational style and willingness to challenge media narratives about her husband's performance. This incident was particularly important because it showed how Miko was able to use controversy to draw attention to issues that she believed were important. And speaking of drawing attention to important issues, Miko's platform wasn't just built on controversy. It was also built on her work as a legitimate media personality. The radio show Explosion. Long before her arrest and Twitter feuds made her a household name, Miko Grimes was building her reputation as one of the most outspoken voices in sports media through her work as a radio host. Her appearances on Miami's 560, WQAM, and other platforms gave her a regular forum to express her opinions about football, the NFL, and the broader issues she cared about. But it was during one particular radio appearance that she delivered what might be her most chilling and prophetic statement about her relationship with the NFL. During a Miami radio appearance, Miko said there is nothing the NFL can do to her except kill her. This wasn't just hyperbole or dramatic flourish. This was a declaration of war against an institution that she believed was corrupt and hypocritical. The context for this statement was her ongoing criticism of the NFL's handling of player safety, particularly regarding concussion protocols and the league's response to chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, research. Miko had been vocal about what she saw as the league's attempts to downplay the long-term health consequences of playing football, and her radio appearances gave her a platform to express these concerns in detail. On her radio show, she would provide detailed analytical reviews of Dolphins games, often calling out defensive failures and coaching decisions with the kind of insider knowledge that came from years of studying the game. But she would also use these platforms to discuss broader issues, including police brutality incidents and social justice concerns. Her co-hosting work on WQAM with Omar Kelly gave her a regular platform to express her views, and clips from these shows were often shared online, contributing to her reputation for outspoken commentary. These broadcasts showed a different side of Miko, someone who had deep knowledge of football strategy and wasn't afraid to share detailed analysis of games and player performance. What made her radio work particularly compelling was how she seamlessly blended sports commentary with social activism. She would use her sports platform to cover Miami-Dade police brutality incidents, telling listeners that if they wanted to hear her football takes, they would also have to hear about injustices happening in their community. This approach led to tensions with some listeners who wanted her to stick to sports, but Miko refused to compartmentalize her activism.
So I got a lot of people that will call in black, I don't listen to this show. For you to talk about the police, stick to sports, then don't listen. Because I'm black. And I'm going to tell you what they're doing to us. At the same time, I'm going to give you these Dolphins reviews and all this stuff.
Her radio work also demonstrated her fearlessness in defending her husband's performance and calling out critics. Recordings of her fiercely defending Brent Grimes against criticism, often with animated delivery, became part of her wild persona and showed her willingness to take on anyone who questioned his abilities. What's particularly interesting about her radio work is how it shows the evolution of her public persona. These appearances reveal someone who was building a platform and developing her voice as a commentator and activist long before the viral incidents that made her famous. The radio shows provided the foundation for everything that came after: the arrests, the Twitter feuds, and the broader controversies that would define her public image. However, not all of Miko's controversial moments would be as defensible as her early activism. Her final explosive moment would cross lines that even her most ardent supporters couldn't defend: the Anti-Semitic Controversy. In 2020, Miko Grimes found herself at the center of a different kind of controversy, one that would test the limits of free speech and highlight the dangers of conspiracy theories in the age of social media. This incident would prove to be one of her most damaging controversies, as she posted content that crossed the line from social activism into hate speech and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. The incident involved Miko posting an anti-Semitic video on Instagram where she claimed Jewish people stole the religion and perpetuated conspiracy theories about Jewish control of media and banks. This wasn't just a moment of poor judgment or inflammatory rhetoric. This was the promotion of harmful stereotypes and conspiracy theories that have been used to justify persecution and violence against Jewish people for centuries. The content of her posts included classic anti-Semitic tropes about Jewish people controlling financial institutions and media companies, theories that have been used to scapegoat Jewish communities during times of social and economic stress. These weren't new ideas that Miko had developed. They were recycled recycled versions of conspiracy theories that have been circulating for decades and have been thoroughly debunked by historians and social scientists. What made this incident particularly troubling was how it represented a departure from Miko's previous activism, which had focused on legitimate issues of racial justice and police accountability. While her methods had always been controversial and her language often inflammatory, her previous causes had been rooted in real social problems that deserved attention and discussion. The anti-Semitic posts, however, ventured into territory that was simply hateful and harmful. The backlash was swift and severe, with calls for her removal from social media platforms and widespread condemnation from Jewish advocacy groups. The incident highlighted the responsibility that comes with having a platform and the potential consequences of using that platform to spread harmful conspiracy theories. This controversy was particularly damaging because it undermined the legitimacy of her other activism. When someone promotes conspiracy theories and hate speech, it calls into question their judgment and credibility on other issues. For someone who had built her reputation on speaking out against injustice, being associated with anti-Semitic content was a significant blow to her credibility. The incident also raised questions about the role of social media platforms in moderating content and the challenges of distinguishing between legitimate political speech and harmful conspiracy theories. While Miko had always pushed boundaries with her commentary, this incident crossed into territory that most reasonable people would consider unacceptable. The anti-Semitic controversy also showed how quickly public opinion can turn against someone who crosses certain lines. While Miko had weathered previous controversies and maintained support from people who admired her willingness to speak out against injustice, the anti-Semitic posts alienated many of her supporters and provided ammunition for her critics. Whether you view Miko Grimes as a truth-telling activist or a controversial troublemaker probably depends on your own political views and your tolerance for confrontational rhetoric. But there's no denying that she has been one of the most fascinating and polarizing figures in the intersection of sports and social activism over the past decade. Her impact on her husband's career cannot be understated. Brent Grimes' release from the Miami Dolphins was directly attributed to Miko's social media activities, demonstrating the real-world consequences of her activism. Yet this outcome was apparently part of her strategy, showing a level of calculated risk-taking that few NFL spouses would ever consider. And with that, we've come to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to click on any of the other cards showing on your screen now to enjoy more interesting content like this.